In June, at their annual convention, booksellers heard from a recent guest of ours, John Updike, on the future of book writing and book publishing. I'd like to share some of his thoughts with you. He said, among other things, booksellers, you are the salt of the book world. You are on the front line where, while the author cowers in his opium den, you encounter or interface, as we say now, the rare and mysterious Americans who are willing to plunk down $25 for a book. Bookstores are lonely forts spilling light onto the sidewalk. They civilize their neighborhoods. At my mother's side, I used to visit the two stores in downtown Reading, Pennsylvania, a city then of 100,000, and I still recall their names and locations: the Book Mart at 6th Street and Court, and the Berkshire News on 5th Street, in front of the trolley stop that would take us home to Shillington. Now I live in a village-like corner of a small New England city that holds mirabile dictu, an independent bookstore, one of the few surviving in the long coastal stretch between Marblehead and Newburyport. But I live, it seems, in a fool's paradise. Last month, the New York Times Magazine published a lengthy article that gleefully envisioned the end of the bookseller, and indeed of the writer. Written by Kevin Kelly, identified as the senior maverick at Wired Magazine, the article describes a glorious digitalizing of all written knowledge. Google's plan, announced in December 2004, to scan the contents of 5 major research libraries and make them searchable. The explosive rise of the web, going from nothing to everything in 1 decade, he writes, has encouraged us to believe in the impossible again. Might the long-heralded great library of all knowledge really be within our grasp? Unlike the libraries of old, Kelly continues, this library would be truly democratic, offering every book to every person. The anarchic nature of the true democracy emerges bit by bit. Once digitized, books can be unraveled into single pages or be reduced further into snippets of a page, Kelly writes. These snippets will be remixed into reordered books and virtual bookshelves, just as the music audience now juggles and reorders songs into new albums or playlists, as they are called in iTunes. The Universal Library will encourage the creation of virtual bookshelves, a collection of texts, some as short as a paragraph, other as long as entire books, that form a library shelf worth of specialized information. And, as with music playlists, once created, these bookshelves will be published and swapped in the public commons. Indeed, some authors will begin to write books to be read as snippets or to be remixed as pages. In imagining a huge, virtually infinite word stream, accessed by search engines and populated by teeming promiscuous word snippets stripped of credited authorship, are we not depriving the written word of its old-fashioned function of, through such inventions as the written alphabet and the printing press, communication from one person to another, of, in short, accountability and intimacy? Yes, there is a ton of information on the web, but much of it is egregiously inaccurate, unedited, unattributed, and juvenile. The electronic marvels that abound around us surprisingly to inflame what is most informally and uncritically human about us, our computer screens stare back at us with a kind of giant instant, "aw shucks," disarming in its modesty, disquieting in its diffidence. The printed, bound, and paid-for book was, still is, for the moment, more exacting, more demanding of its producer and consumer. It is the sight of an encounter in silence of two minds, one following in the other's steps, but invited to imagine, to argue, to concur on a level of reflection beyond that of personal encounter, with all its merely social conventions, its merciful padding of blather and mutual forgiveness. Book readers and writers are approaching the condition of holdouts, surly hermits who refuse to come out and play in the electronic sunshine of the post-Gutenberg village. When books are digitized, Kelly ominously promises, reading becomes a community activity. The Universal Library becomes one very, very, very large single text, the world's only book. Books traditionally have edges. Some are rough cut and some are smooth cut, and a few, at least in my extravagant publisher's house, are even top stained. In the electronic anthill, where are the edges? The book revolution, which from the Renaissance on taught men and women to cherish and cultivate their individuality, threatens to end in a sparkling cloud of snippets. So, booksellers, defend your lonely forts. Keep your edges dry. Your edges are our edges. For some of us, books are intrinsic to our sense of personal identity. This is Jim Foster, Conversations on the Coast.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.